All right, folks, good morning. Good morning, and welcome to the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on January 10th of 2021 already. Good morning, Cam.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
I am well. It's been a crazy week. Obviously, we brought in 2021 with a bang, and in so many ways. Somebody sent me a meme the other day that said, I've tried my free 7-day subscription to 2021. I'd like to cancel. I'm on board with that. All right, folks, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's our phone line to reach into the station for two-way talk and conversation, 508-871-7000. You can also text us on our text line, which is up and running. It's just a text service so that if you text it, it comes in real time. Obviously, a couple of things have to come together, like I have to look at the screen. But if you text us at 617-297-8388, I'll get it just like you text anybody else, 617-297-8388. Or email me at textjoeontheradio@gmail.com. I'll get it as well. You can also reach the show off air at JoeMShow@gmail.com. That's for correspondence. Some of you use the text line to talk to the show. That's fine, but JoeMShow@gmail.com has a better chance of being seen during the week, or call our office at 508-603-9778. You know, you can tell Alexa to play WCRN, and she'll do that. It's a pretty awesome thing. We're also live streaming the show at the Facebook page, Joe Mangiacotti Show. And that is our handle. And I guess, Cam, that's what we call it, right? Handles?
I think so.
That's the term. So our handle on all our social media platforms are Joe Mangiacotti Show. When I started creating those, I can't believe how many other Mangies already existed that grabbed it. They had Joe Mangiacotti already. Like, I wanted to just Joe Mangiacotti, taken. Who would have thought? I know there's another. If you Google me, you get like 14 pages, but there's a Joe Mangiacotti who's a big deal with Coldwell Banker Real Estate out of New York. And he comes up a lot, which is funny because my very first job out of high school and start in real estate was with Coldwell Banker. And
Wow.
This was back in 1984 when it was part of the Sears Financial Network. And I don't know if what year were you born?
94.
Yeah, geez. So 10 years before you were born, I went to work for a real estate company called Coldwell Banker, which was a huge company, but they came up with this concept. They were bought by Sears, and they threw Dean Witter in the real estate office in the stores. So there's a real estate office and a financial planning in every Sears store, and I'm 18 years old, so I don't know this is weird. How do I know? I have nothing to compare it to. I don't know that's a strange office. We had a kiosk, a little round table, and this was before the internet is the way it was. Of course, it was in the 80s, right? So Al Gore was still inventing it over at MIT. And we had to use bulletin boards to log on for MLS, but we had these books and everything. Anyway, it brings back memories. But that's, I don't know how we got on to, so the Joe Mangiacotti, yeah. So this guy is a big deal with that. Anyway, folks, 508-871-7000, a lot to talk about today. We already have a text message coming in. Big Comtech banning Parler, Apple, and Google and Amazon. We're going to talk about that, actually, in a second. I'm going to get into the whole banning because I think that's a conversation that we absolutely have to have. But before we move into that, and we will move into that, I do want to talk about the woman, okay? We have this wonderful, beautiful lady, 34 years old, shot dead in the Capitol during the melee there earlier in the week. And I think this is worth mentioning. So they've opened an investigation into her death. Federal prosecutor opens excessive force investigation into death of Ashley Babbitt. Michael Sherwin, acting U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, said the office has started a federal excessive force investigation over the shooting and killing of former U.S. veteran Ashley Babbitt in the Capitol. Sherwin confirmed the investigation with CBS News, and his civil rights section will lead the prosecution, which is being investigated by D.C. police and the FBI. So what it's alleged that happened, apparently what happened is one of the plainclothes security personnel, and what you realize now, if you haven't, is when you watch the footage of the House and you see all the members of Congress, but you see people, usually men, standing around in suits, just standing in the back or sitting off to the back and not really participating. Now you're going to realize that those are mostly plainclothes security, because when they started pounding on the doors, you saw them barricade them and the windows being smashed. They drew their weapons and took a defensive posture. And she was standing outside the door when the glass was smashed and the officer fired into a crowd, which I would think is not work out well for him, because when you fire your weapon and you're supposed to be trained, you really are supposed to have your target selected and not fire into a group of people like that. It seems a little sloppy. So we'll follow what happens. But the investigation's open to her. That was tragic. There were a few other deaths. 3 other deaths of people with medical issues that happened there. And then, of course, we've got the officer hit by a fire extinguisher and succumbed to his injuries. So we can talk about this. We did a little bit yesterday. We can talk a little bit more about this. But I got to tell you, if you don't have the same condemnation and outrage over what happened in those bad actors that did what they did, as you did all summer long, and even up until a couple months ago when we saw the looting and the police precincts being burnt and federal courthouses being attacked, then you're a hypocrite. What happened is unacceptable. Now, again, how did the breakdown happen? How did that happen? How did they breach it so easily? Well, a couple theories here that is common sense. First of all, when you're talking about security situations like that, you assess your needs for security based on the intelligence and the pre-op intelligence. And there's never been, when typical Trump supporters and patriots like that have gathered, there's never been violence like this. They've never really they've had rallies and even protests, and they pick up after themselves. They had no reason to believe that this was going to turn this way. So that's one reason that what you saw for boundaries in front of Capitol building were basically those snow fences. That's cosmetic, and that's just for kind of channeling people. It's not security. If they had intelligence or thought for a moment that there was going to be trouble like this, there would have been very different barricades. Now there's videotape circulating. It's very easy, folks. You can get online for a couple minutes. You'll find it. You can go to my Facebook page. I think I shared a few of them, where Capitol Police actually pick up the barrier and invite some of the protesters in, apparently thinking they were just going to hold their signs. But they were infiltrated with bad actors, and not excused by any means. They should be found and prosecuted. And on that note, by the way, they have. The Jamoke who sat at Nancy Pelosi's desk, right? He's been arrested. He was arrested and faces multiple charges. Richard Barnett, he's from Arkansas. He was arrested the other morning in Little Rock. Ken Cole, the first assistant U.S. attorney for the office in Washington, he said Cole told reporters that during the conference call that Barnett was charged with entering and remaining in a restricted building and grounds without authority. He is also charged for violent entry and disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds and for the theft of public money or public property. So he took some chachi or something from her office, imposed himself. Is that like a gene cam? Like, can these idiots not resist taking selfies of themselves?
So apparently what he took was he took an envelope that had her name on it. I guess that's what he said he wrote a letter for her, and he said he didn't steal it because he left a quarter on the desk.
That
bonkers.
Do you follow that warped logic, though? I'm not stealing it because I'm going to leave compensation for the envelope. So it was like a self-addressed envelope or something? Or was it addressed to her?
I think it was just a plain envelope with her
like
seal
return
on
address.
Yeah.
Okay. Because actually, if it was addressed to her, then that's actually stealing mail, I would think, and that's a whole nother issue. But yeah, he was taking the speaker's mail and leaving a quarter on her desk. some of these people are too stupid to not be arrested. But we've had these people that have been picked up. I think that there was also, let me see, I thought I had email open. Hold on. There was, let's talk about this. So feds arrest the man in a helmet, by the way. So did you see that picture? I mean, it was some kind of warped American Braveheart combination thing where he has the helmet and the horns. He has the flag body paint on him. They arrested him as well. So they've also arrested Karen Pelosi's lectern, right? That was the other one, the guy who was in the Great Hall with the lectern. So they've picked up these people. We'll get into more of those if you want to hear about them, but you can go check them out on my Facebook page. The stories are there. Look, we got facial recognition software. These people are posting on their accounts. It's not going to be hard to track all of these people down. All right. So let's get into Twitter is cool with inciting when it's against Trump. Check Kathy Lee Griffin tweet out. That's coming from Right State. So here's the thing. And Pompeo says the same thing. That Twitter's decision to permanently ban President Donald Trump is un-American and parallels censorship under communist China. Secretary of State Pompeo said this yesterday. This broke yesterday, folks. Silence in speech is dangerous. It's un-American. Sadly, this isn't a new tactic of the left. They've worked to silence opposing voices for years. This is what he's writing on his tweet. We cannot let them silence 75 million Americans. This isn't the CCP, referring to China's Communist Party, weaponizing of technology and social media to monitor and suppress dissident. Earlier, Twitter stated that it permanently removed Trump's account from its platform, saying they have identified risk of further incitement of violence. And upon review of how recent tweets are being received and interpreted on and off Twitter, Facebook similarly blocked Trump until at least January 20th. First of all, they're making a leap here in some of things, how it's interpreted. So they're deciding how it's interpreted. Again, we're back to the argument as to whether these social media platforms are platforms or are they publications. That is the issue with the Section 230. In the same week that Trump wanted to put the Section 230 up as part of the stimulus package, as part of that bill, is the same week these platforms deplatform him. Kind of a payback. The response to Twitter's move, Trump condemned the tech giant, saying the company has gone further and further in banning free speech. Trump vowed that he will not be silenced. He said he, as a team, has been negotiating with Twitter's competitors and is looking into options to build their own platform. So he's talking about, he's always negotiating. So now we have Parler. Now, Parler has been an alternative for a while. We've seen some people like Dan Bongino. Not only did Dan Bongino start using Parler, he actually saw it as, and good for him, as a business opportunity and invested. He's a minority owner in the Parler platform. And obviously he started using it. Now, the big tech lefties have decided that they're not going to allow their competitor to do that because Apple Store and Google Play have removed that app from their store, so you can't get it. There's no other delivery system for this. Is there, Cam? Is there any other way to buy an app, right? You have to go through Apple Store or Google Play, right?
If you have an Android phone, don't think you do, but iPhones, which like 75% of people have, you have to get it through the App Store.
Right. And I don't like the Apple stuff. And I just never, I became a Droid user. I tried Apple, the 4S when it came out for a little while. I didn't like it. I didn't like the no back button. Then if you have Gmail, like I do for everything, you get all, it doesn't work well with it. I don't like it. I don't see the appeal to the Apple. Plus, of course, all their slave labor doesn't help their case either. But if you don't have your app on those, people can't get them. So one further, AWS. AWS, Amazon Web Service. And we've mentioned this in passing on this show, that Amazon, in addition to being the retail giant, online giant that we know it to be, actually is responsible for a tremendous amount of internet traffic because of their server farms, Amazon Web Service. So you probably don't realize that not just when you're shopping on Amazon, but when you're on most sites, you're going through an Amazon server farm somewhere. And they've threatened Parler with saying if you don't change your policies and start doing what we do and deciding to, censor the way we do, we will shut down web services for you, which is equivalent to putting a ship in the middle of a desert. There's no vehicle to move through the cyberspace. The ship would have no way to move through the sand. It wouldn't work. It's the same thing. They just turn them off, in essence. So the retort to all of this, right? Go online, go check out social media. What do they say? Well, they're private companies, right? They start liking them to the bakers baking, when the gay couple went in to get the cake for their wedding. Well, they turned them down. They're a private company. They can do that, right? That turned into a Supreme Court case, for crying out loud. And they liken it to a private business can do what they want if they don't take federal money and they're not part of the government. Yes, however, that's the argument. We've got two things, the Section 230, and when it becomes a public domain, right? Many years ago with the railroad system, they were all privately owned companies. But the court, time and time again, whether it's the railroad service or Ma Bell, has determined that even a private company, once it reaches a certain penetration of the population, is a public domain and like a public service, right? Gas companies, electric companies. You'd be hard-pressed to argue that the internet and the social Facebook and Twitter are not equal to public service entities like the electric company, the phone companies. And once you reach that size and that status, it does change for you. And then also the response to this, they're a private business, then they can do whatever they want. Really? Then open the restaurants, open the bars. They're private companies. How does the government have any say over them then if they're private companies? So you see, it's not just as simple as it's a private business that can do whatever they want. Apparently they can't. Otherwise, wouldn't all the retail stores, restaurants, bars be open? So the government does have sway over and some authority over private entities. And the argument on these platforms is, again, the Section 230. Now, I know that I have talked about this before, and I don't know if everyone listening understands what that is. But the short of it is, many years ago, we're talking in the late 90s when the internet was picking up steam, the majority of us in the country, in the world, with the exception of the Big Bang crowd, right? The nerds, the scientists, the techs who understood what this was and was working it all out. We didn't know what it really was, and that include politicians. There were people that into the early 2000s still thought the internet was a phase and it was going to go away. So the legislature, with their lobbying and urging, they put in Section 230 as an exemption, saying that they didn't have to define themselves as a platform or a publication, meaning that anything that was put out onto their platforms, they couldn't be held responsible for. So they had an exemption as a publication. In essence, they weren't a publication. Yet they published many things, right? They publish articles. They let people publish articles, share articles, write comments, write essays, post. But they were not responsible, or could not, with the exemption of Section 230, be held responsible for anything that was put out there. So they weren't inundated with these lawsuits and libel suits and so forth. And at that time, our lawmakers thought they needed this protection so that this new industry could get off the ground, right? Could develop and grow. So they didn't need it. They didn't want it killed in the crib. They didn't want it sued out of existence before it was able to get up and running. So they gave them this exemption. So since the inception of the internet in these online and these platforms, they have not had to declare themselves, but they do declare themselves depending on what's convenient for them. But if they were, in fact, defined as a publication, then they are open to the same libel and lawsuits that the New York Times, the New York Post, the Boston Globe, the Herald, even this radio station, everybody else is. And they would have to deal with that. But if they're a platform, then they're a vehicle. They're a tool. They have no editorial control over what goes out, nor can they be held responsible for whatever goes on there. Because they're just a tool. If somebody writes, Kim, if I write you a threatening letter that I'm going to take your life or mess you up, and I mail you the letter, do we sue the post office for delivering it?
Nope.
Absolutely not. So that would be the difference. If they were just defined as a platform, they would have no liability for whatever people put out there. But in the same token, if I mail you that letter, does the post office open it up, read it, and then seal it back up and send it to you? No, without a court order. So neither should the platform. So that's the argument of the 230, is that they have their cake and they eat it too, folks. So the question is, what are they? A platform, or are they a publication? But at this point, they're such a huge business and they're so powerful that you can't deny that they are a public utility, just like the gas company or the electric company, serving similar purpose to the populace as a whole. So there should be government regulation, like we've done with the electric company, with the gas companies, with the railroads, and like we did at one point when we broke Ma Bell up, because the phone company was a monopoly and it was too large, and we had to put antitrust laws into place so that they couldn't squash their competitors. And this is what they're doing now. They want to squash Parler and any other competitor. Now, we're going to go to a break in a minute, but on top of all this, now you've got CNN, who has gone to legislators and their other media outlets to get Fox off the air. So now here we got one news outlet going to the newfound leadership here, saying that we want you to remove our competitor off the air. I mean, this is Orwellian, doesn't even begin to describe what this is. But it seems that comments, as long as they're politically on the same political side, they're okay. Because remember when that Kathy Griffin with the severed Trump's head all bloody and so forth, there was no banning her or shutting her account down. The Ayatollah Khomeini can have a Twitter account. So it really isn't about what's being said. It comes down to who is saying it. And that's the dangerous, slippery slope that we're on right now. That is the danger that we're in. It's too Orwellian. It is absolutely censorship. Besides Trump, Twitter has also banned accounts for lawyer Sidney Powell, Trump's former national security advisor Michael Flynn. The waves of Twitter bans have prompted some users, including radio host Mark Levine and Rush Limbaugh, to make a voluntary exit, going over to these other platforms. All right, folks, we're going to take a break at half past the hour of 6 a.m. here on the Joe Mangiacotti Show. 508-871-7000. Lines open and available. Stick with us. We'll be back in just a few moments. I'm Joe Mangiacotti.
This is Sean Burke, President of the Licensed Private Detectives Association of Massachusetts, asking you to visit us at lpdam.org when you think you need a private investigator. Don't let your emotions negatively affect your future. Get your answers through a Massachusetts licensed private investigator. Get the facts without risking your credibility by unknowingly committing a criminal offense. You need a license to perform investigations in Massachusetts. What are some types of work that requires a license? Any type of surveillance, interviewing someone for a third party, background and asset are just a few examples. For more on this, visit us at lpdm.org and tune into AM 830 WCRN Sunday mornings at 7:30 for case files from the LPDM or anytime at lpdmcasefiles.com.
We know why you're awake. Your child is about to get their driver's license. Levante's Auto School offers 1-week driving programs to help make sure your child stays safe and focused behind the wheel.
877 drive Ed. Who's Ed?
That's the number for Levante's Auto School.
Learn to drive safely and efficiently. Visit one of our 5 locations throughout Massachusetts. Click Levante'sAutoschool.com.
Levante's Auto School shows you how to learn the rules and keep your cool. Call 877 drive Ed.
Who's Ed? That's the number for Levante's Auto School.
It's time to go out with Joe.
Welcome to this edition of Out with Joe. 2021 should be an interesting year. We're brought to you by Nothing Bun Cakes in White City Plaza in Shrewsbury. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. This week, we're going to take a look at what restaurants you need to pay attention to in 2021. See, traditionally at the end of the year, Restaurant Business publishes a sampling of emerging restaurants to watch in the new year. But 2020, of course, has not been like any other year. That's not saying there aren't concepts worth watching. As the pandemic does some Darwinian weeding out of restaurant business models, investors are still finding growth concepts to put their money behind. Fast casual chicken chain Starboard received a $4 million cash infusion in December to fuel its growth across California. And in November, 83-unit Torchy's Tacos completed a new funding round, and health-focused, value-minded Every Table closed on a $16 million investment deal. But here are some other hot topics, restaurant operators should be paying attention to in 2021. The vaccine distribution. The reasons to pay attention to this are really a no-brainer. The sooner vaccines become widely administered, the sooner life will return to some version of normal. Dine-in suspensions and capacity caps will ease. Consumers will regain confidence in on-premise dining, and most likely pent-up demand for restaurant hospitality and social gatherings will spark a major boom with the industries. We might even see another roaring 20s. Widespread vaccinations will likely have another ripple effect. Restaurants will likely return to having a deep well of teenage employees whose parents had kept them out of the workforce because of coronavirus fears. Also, airport concepts. Licensing a restaurant concept for airport expansion was traditionally a reliable way to bring in some revenue and build brand awareness. Not so much in a COVID world. Now, those airport restaurants are largely shut down or seeing greatly depressed traffic. It's unknown when most Americans will feel comfortable to travel widely again, but we will see brands create a more grab-and-go alternative or duck out of the airport space entirely in the new year. And then there's the suburban swing. Restaurant real estate will no doubt remain a hot topic in 2021. How long downtown cores will remain ghost towns is uncertain, but it's clear that many office workers who once frequented nearby fast casuals will work from home for a good chunk of the coming year. Some might never return to their cubicles. That has many operators eyeing suburban locations or even ways to do regular suburban deliveries of their food. And are grocerants still a threat? Pre-pandemic operators nervously eye grocery store chains adding wine bars, quick service options, or even full-service sit-down concepts amid their shelves of cereal and walls of kale. Now, with consumers getting hooked on the convenience of grocery delivery, the relevance of those concepts, well, they're a little less certain. Mega retailer Roger, however, did announce its entrance into the ghost kitchen space this fall, so perhaps the grocerant still looms as a threat. For more on this article, check out this post on OutWithJoe.com from Restaurant Business. We're still suspending the Music Minute for the time being for obvious reasons, but don't forget to support your local musicians. We do. For
For more on dining and entertainment, click outwithjoe.com and follow us on social media at Out With Joe. Out With Joe has been brought to you by Nothing Bun Cakes in White City Plaza in Shrewsbury, on Facebook at Nothing Bun Cakes Shrewsbury.
The preceding program has been a production of Cameo Productions.
Have you heard of the hottest new bakery around? I know you heard about it right here. My friend Al has opened Nothing Bundt Cake in the White City Plaza in Shrewsbury. Nothing Bundt Cake is a bakery chain and is locally owned and operated by my friend Al. They have bundt cakes ranging from bite-sized to tiered, plus platters, candles, and cards. For any occasion, function, or just to have around the house or office, stop by and check them out. Everything is baked from scratch and on site. Nothing beats a sweet surprise. And until you try one of Al's bundt cakes, you haven't tried a real bundt cake. Stop by and ask for Al. Tell him Joe told you to stop by. 98 Boston Turnpike, White City Plaza near Planet Fitness, Shrewsbury, and on Facebook as well, Nothing Bundt Cake Shrewsbury.
To join the conversation, call 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Now, here's your host, Joe Mangiacotti.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second half of the first hour in the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Sunday, the 10th of January. I am Joe Mangiacotti in studio. Behind the glass is Cam. Running the board. Teddy Goodpup in studio as well. I think we, if we already hadn't heard, we have a new candidate being introduced to the Find a Forever Home for Teddy's friends. Cashew is looking for a home for their very own human. All the details to the animals, are four-legged furry friends that need their forever homes and their own humans, are on Teddy Goodpup Facebook page. The link's over to whatever shelter that they're in, whether it's Bay Path, Buddy Dog, Worcester Animal Rescue League, wherever they are. You can find the details there. So go check it out. And we're very happy with the Find Your Forever Home for Teddy's Friends program going on so far. 508-871-7000. Lindsey Graham also jumped in on this, saying that Twitter may ban me for this, but I willingly accept that fate. Your decision to permanently ban President Trump is a serious mistake. The Ayatollah can tweet, but Trump can't. Says a lot about the people who run Twitter. I got news for you. They're running more than Twitter. Right? They're in now that the Biden administration's coming in and the Democrats are controlling Congress, they're pretty much going to be able to do whatever they want to do. And we're going to get into the China connection to Biden and all that as well. But there's something interesting, just an observation. This talk now about Nancy Pelosi threatening the president to resign or she will file articles of impeachment with days left to the administration. We're going to talk about this. It's beyond asinine. First of all, the grounds for the impeachment isn't there. But my observation here, my theory is that if it wasn't for the hatred of Donald Trump, if it wasn't for them all focusing, would the Democratic Party be cohesive? Would they have anything? I mean, they're so fractured within the Democratic Party. Do you think that the squad is really on the same page as Pelosi? Do you think that if it wasn't for the common hatred of the sitting president, would we see how fractured the Democratic Party is? I wonder. 508-871-7000. Let's jump to the phones. Don in Stoughton's been waiting patiently. Good morning, Don. How are you, sir?
Oh, good morning, Joe. Boy, never have I been so more fearful of the future than I am currently.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. But, the Republic will last. The Republic will stand, I hope. I've said this over and over again. When it comes down to it in the big picture, the pendulum swings, Dawn, and it swings to the left, it swings to the right. We have those sweet spots when it's kind of a split government. We've got an equal division of power. We don't have that right now. I mean, today we kind of do, but we're not going to have it in the next few days.
Think of this, though, Joe. I mean, when this nation was created, they were not thinking of the Democrat Party. All they were thinking of was liberal conservatism. They wanted to, conserve their birthright as English freemen.
Yeah.
They never thought of these open borders where anybody could come in. Where Kamala Harris, born to two foreign students who overstayed their visa, is eligible to be the president? Where does that happen? Where does that happen, Joe?
In the United States of America, apparently. I mean, obviously, right?
But Article 2 says you have to be a natural-born citizen of 2 American parents.
What was the status of her parents? I thought that they were in the country legally, but over a visa, stayed over a visa. I honestly don't know.
In
the
other words, they
details
were
of it.
breaking the law, but still they were foreign
Yeah,
citizens.
but she was born on American soil, right?
That doesn't matter.
I'm just saying.
John
that,
McCain was born in Panama to 2 American parents, and he was a natural-born citizen. There's only one definition of natural-born citizen, Joe. That you're born to 2 American parents in good standing.
And why isn't this an issue? Is everybody afraid to get into this birther thing again?
Correct.
Like
yeah.
with,
look at the birther thing with Obama. Obama was born to a father of a Kenyan national subject to a minor mother who had no citizenship at all, save for what her parents or her husband had for her. She was married to a Kenyan. She became a Kenyan citizen. She had no American citizenship to pass on. How could Obama become president?
Wait, back up. How did his mother? I thought his mother was a white American woman. No.
She was a minor, Joe. She couldn't even vote. She had no citizenship. Her only citizenship was that of her parents or her husband. I'll repeat.
Okay.
She was married to a Kenyan. She became a Kenyan citizen. She had no American citizenship to pass on. Obama was not a natural-born citizen.
But why?
Wait a minute.
Why?
Article 2.
But Don, explain to me, because why wasn't she a citizen? Because she was a minor?
She was an American citizen until she married her husband. She was the citizenship of her parents.
Right, but did she give up her American citizenship?
When she married her husband, yes.
Are you saying by the virtue of marrying her husband, she gave up her American citizenship?
That's how it works for a minor. Minor. A minor has no citizenship save for the parent.
Interesting.
Or their husband.
That little caveat there is news to me. I did not understand.
Minors have no citizenship save for what their family is.
Right.
It's like when Obama moved to Indonesia with his mother. He became an Indonesian citizen because that's what his mother became.
All right, just for the record, because I did not understand this and still don't understand that if you happen to be a minor, but you're an American, you're born in America, you're an American citizen, but you're a minor, if you marry a foreign person, you automatically relinquish your American citizenship?
That's the way I understand it. Yes, that's what the law has stated.
I've never ever heard that. That's incredible news. I mean,
yeah, no, I mean, how do you retain your citizenship if you're married to a foreign national?
Yeah, but I married a foreign person, foreign national. I didn't give up my American citizenship.
Well, wait a second. Where did this marriage occur?
In the United States.
Okay, it was a legal, lawful marriage.
Absolutely.
That's fine. The person that you married, were they a minor or a majority?
No, majority.
Okay, so that you were both majority of age?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Barack Obama's mother was 17 or 18. She was a minor.
So I don't remember this being the argument on his birth issue. I remember the argument being that he himself was not born on American soil and his being born in Kenya.
Because that's what the news media wanted you to know. It was like Bill Clinton. Why couldn't Bill Clinton be the president of the United States? Because he deserted from the Army Reserves. That's a dishonorable discharge. You cannot hold any office of public trust. No one's ever argued that point. Oh, well, he was pardoned. No, he wasn't. You have to apply for the pardon. Well, he was in the draft lottery. No, he wasn't. Executive Order 11497 said no.
When people pick out their papers, right, you would think that do we not have a screening process that you have to check off so many boxes to even, get onto the ballot? Why isn't that a process?
I have no idea, Joe. It's like CNN wanting Fox to get off the air.
Yeah. So this is something interesting, right? So they decide that they're going to go to their puppets in Congress, and they even reached out to the other media outlets and news outlets to say, let's all getting up here and get Fox off the air. I mean, it's not going to happen, but the audacity, the cojones on the little what's his name? The short bald guy that runs CNN. Why am I'm drawing a blank on his name?
Yeah.
I mean, why do they think that this is just, and this is, if this is happening before the inauguration, before the new administration and new power dynamic is even in place, what are we looking at in 6 weeks and 6 months from now?
Now remember, Joe, you were talking about the Republic. Do you know that this Republic, it's been established many years ago, and to get as good as it is, it's taken decades and decades and decades. Look at Venezuela. Venezuela was just a few years younger than the United States. I think it was the early 1800s. In just a few years, Joe, they've been completely and absolutely destroyed.
Yeah.
Now,
it didn't take long to bring them down, Don, right? It took a long time to build it up.
That's exactly where I'm going.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I'm going. It's so easy to destroy a nation. And Joe, if the borders are opened, if Biden sells off, the border fence for scrap and opens the borders, what do you do with 20, 30, 40, 50 million illegal aliens when a Republican president get back in again? What do you do with all those people?
Yeah, I got to tell you,
I can't sleep. I can't sleep, Joe.
I mean, the thing is, in Border Patrol will tell you, where the fence has gone up, illegal crossings 100% down. Overall,
it's a force multiplier, correct?
And why is that a bad thing? In other words, if people are entering through one of the points of entry, and I don't know how many times do we have to talk about this, folks. There are like 38 points of entry along the side. Like, go to one of those, and if you're in any of those categories of fleeing because of persecution or whatever, that we have protocols in place so that you don't automatically get sent back.
But that's legal, Joe. That's legal. They don't want to do the legal stuff. They want to come here illegally, so they're never known who the hell they are.
Right.
Today, what is it? The new Supreme Court Justice, what's her name? An affirmative action person. She believes that everybody should have a driver's license. So these illegals can go from town to town and get different licenses, and it's all fine because we don't know who the hell they are because they're here illegally, because that's okay, Joe.
Yeah. The issuing of licenses, and I've heard the argument. It's for safety and for safety.
Right.
The problem is a license opens up so much to us. And yeah, except for voting, by the way. I mean, this is where it doesn't match up, right? The argument to have a license, but no voter ID. They don't.
You
congeal.
need ID to get a book out of a library, but not to vote.
Yeah.
Only in America. Yeah. How strong is that republic, Joe?
Yeah.
When a republic does not support its own beliefs in defense of voting, the most important thing that a person can do is the least. You have to show the least in order to do this.
Hey,
or nothing at all.
Hey, Don, so let me show. So a tweet came in on a text came in on a text line. Joe, hey, what happens if someone like the CCP decides to hold the pendulum on the left swing? Well,
there you go.
That's exactly what is happening, right? I mean, the biggest celebration on election night was actually probably in Beijing. And this is what you see going on right now, right? They literally blocked, not suspended, not blocked for a while, but removed the sitting president of the United States Twitter account. They've decided
Facebook the same thing, Joe.
And Facebook, and they've decided that how they interpret things. Not what's said. Now, I was saying this to Jerry when he was in yesterday and on Political Thursday. And Jerry asked me, when things were unfolding on Wednesday, why did I watch it all day? Why do I have it on? And my answer to him is because too many times do I watch something live, and then when I watch the news later on that day, it's like two different stories.
They already cut out Trump's speech where he said, now march to the Capitol peacefully and patriotically. And all you hear the news is march to the Capitol. And look at Joe Biden.
And he said, by the way, Don, he said, show strength, meaning show strength in your numbers and your solidarity. They reported that he said, "and fight." He didn't say that. But if you watch the news reports, he said, "March to the Capitol and fight." Well, that's not what he said. Well, that's what he meant. That's what we interpreted.
Joe Biden shrieking that Cruz and the other guy were acting just like Hitler.
Oh yeah,
Hitler.
Yeah, I got that.
And that all of the Trump supporters were a bunch of thugs.
Yeah.
This is going to be our new president.
Yeah.
But they really bitched and moaned when Trump said that there were good people on both sides of the statue argument, and that was jerked completely out of anything recognizable. And these dumb bastards that we have today, it's like a psychopath. A psychopath can always lie to themselves. And it just reminds me of the Democrat Party. Yeah. And when people call in that support the Democrat Party, I look at them as psychopaths because the words coming out of their mouth do not match reality, Joe.
Right. It's Hawley, by the way, and I'm going to get into that article, by the way, because it's very important. Good call, Don. Anything else?
And they put a wall up around Congress, and Twitter and Facebook have put walls up against President Trump. But they don't like walls for illegal aliens, Joe.
Right. Good point.
Thank you.
Electronic wall. Good call, Don. Thank you very much. 508-871-7000 and join the conversation. 508-871-7000. So what Don was referring to is Cruz and Hawley responded after President-elect Biden compares them to Nazi propagandists. So from Epoch Times, right, the two prominent Republican senators challenged President-elect Joe Biden after he compared them to the infamous Nazi propagandist. Biden on Friday said Senator Cruz, who we all know, I love to see him run again for president or even end up on the Supreme Court someday, and Josh Hawley, he's a Republican from Missouri, are part of the big lie. Biden is constantly talking up both sides of it. He talks about coming together and being president to everybody, but at the same time, he has very divisive type of conversations. He then recounted being told that Joseph Goebbels, Adolf Hitler's minister of propaganda, falsely said that more people were killed in the bombing of Dresden than really dead, right? Remember this? He got confused with the 2,500, 25,000, 250,000. And our papers printed that. Our papers printed it. That's a big lie. This is Biden talking. So in a statement in response, Hawley said that President-elect Biden has just compared me and other Republican senators to Nazis. You read that correctly. Think about that for a moment. Let it sink in. Because I raised questions in the format prescribed by the laws of the United States about the way elections were conducted in the state of Pennsylvania, just as Democrats did about other states in 01, 05, and 17. He's calling me a Nazi. And this is a good point here. You know, every single Republican presidential candidate every Republican president who's elected president in modern times, in our lifetime, has the Democrats did this at every one of the confirmation or the certification ceremonies like we had on the 6th. Every time. Bush and Bush, right? Trump, of course. I mean, they went way beyond. With Trump's just a whole nother category. But let's go back. Bush, Reagan, Bush, and Reagan. They all, the Democrats did it. Same thing. Same exact thing that the Republicans were doing on the 6th or intended to do on the 6th. Democrats have done every time. I mean, it becomes par for the course, guys. Perfectly legal. Perfectly well within the rights in the process. Not a big deal. And if these bad actors didn't lose their grip on Wednesday, what would have happened is nothing would have changed. I don't know, why people, I guess they might have been led to believe that, all of a sudden nothing was going to change. But what was going to happen is that these Republican senators were going to be able to raise the question of the improprieties in the election and make a point and be forced or force the conversation to happen. And then use that as a leverage, which was Graham and Cruz's intention, to get a 2020 election commission appointed to study it. Not that they thought that somehow Trump was going to get sworn in, the electors would go back to, that it was going to go back to the states and the states were going to change it. That's not what it was. The intention was to force the conversation about the election. But what happened shut everything down and, quite frankly, pissed everybody off. So they eliminated the ability for that. In a statement in response, this undignified, immature, and intemperate behavior from the president-elect, it is utterly shameful. He should act like a dignified adult and retract these sick comments, and every Democrat member of Congress should be asked to disavow those disgusting comments. This is Hawley saying this. Cruz took to Twitter to call Biden comments really sad. Quote, at a time of deep national division, President-elect Biden's choice to call his political opponents literal Nazis does nothing to bring us together or promote healing. This kind of vicious partisan rhetoric only tears us apart, only tears the country apart. Biden's team didn't respond to the request for comment, and Biden, who regularly said during the 2020 campaign that he would work to unite the country if elected, was upset when Hawley and Cruz objected to electoral votes from Arizona and Pennsylvania. The senators pointed to election irregularities and said it was the only forum in which they were able to raise the questions. So they didn't think that they were going to change the electoral votes. They didn't think it was going to go back to the states. They needed a platform and they needed an avenue to talk about the irregularities, to talk about the election. And Cruz and Graham wanted the end result to be a commission or a committee or some kind of vehicle be created to look at the irregularities and, quite frankly, voter fraud that existed. And this is the question, because the response that we get, and if you remember, originally was there is no voter fraud. Then when the evidence presented, okay, well, it's not widespread. So my question to you is, how much illegality is acceptable? Right, it's the old story. You know, would you sleep with him for $1 million? Yeah, would you sleep with him for $100? No. Would you sleep with him for $1 million? Well, yes. Well, we've established that you're a prostitute. It's just when we're negotiating the price. It's the same thing here. So we've established that there is voter fraud. You've accepted that on the premise. Across the board, left and right, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, it doesn't matter, Green Party, we all accept the fact that there is voter fraud out there. So now it's a matter of how much illegality is acceptable. If there's 6% of the votes are illegal, that's acceptable? 40% acceptable? This is one area in life, I think, that it should be a zero tolerance, that we should be shooting for 0% of illegal votes, meaning that one vote, one person, and every single person legally eligible to vote has the option to. We can't force people who are legally authorized to vote. We can't do that. That's not who we are. But we can, sure as heck, work to say every single person who is not legally eligible to vote doesn't vote, cannot vote. They don't have a vehicle, an avenue, an ability, a process to do it. And when people who are literally in the graveyard have voted, We have a serious problem here, folks. This is going to wrap up hour one of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on the Sunday edition. So stick with us, 508-871-7000, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. We'll be back for the second hour in just a few moments, so stick with us. I'm Joe Mangiacotti.
WACE Chicopee and WCRN Worcester.
7 o'clock.
Hey folks, Joe Mangiacotti from the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Reminding you, talk radio is the immune system to the partisan, bias, political rhetoric attacking us on a daily basis. Get inoculated. The Joe Mangiacotti Show is your vaccine. Join me weekend mornings, 6 to 8.
I want to tell you what Cantiani Insurance has been able to do for me and Teddy. We stopped in to see Paul Sr. and the great staff at 318 Plantation Street. They've been handling my car and business insurance for years. Teddy was making his way around the office, and they let me know. They now offer pet insurance. For a fraction of what one visit to the vet was for Teddy, they could cover him for a whole year. I know you treat your furry family members like any other family member, and as well as I do Teddy. The professional staff at Cantiani's has been providing courteous service for over 40 years, with integrity and personalized service, making sure that your insurance actually protects you and your family. With 2 locations, the 318 Plantation Street in Worcester and East Douglas Insurance Agency, located at 306 Main Street in Douglas. For home, auto, business insurance, and now pet insurance, click CantianiAgency.com or call 508-791-2088. 508-791-2088.
This is a Find a Forever Home for Teddy's Friends, brought to you by the Cantiani Insurance Group, with locations at 318 Plantation Street and East Douglas Insurance at 306 Main Street, Douglas, and anytime at CantianiAgency.com. Today's candidate comes to us from Bay Path Humane Society in Hopkinton. Cashew. She is a 9-month-old female mixed breed. She weighs about 50 pounds. This gorgeous young lady is ready to meet her forever home family. Cashew may do well with having other dogs as playmates, but should live at home as the only dog, where she can settle in and form a strong bond with her people. After so much transition, she is nervous of new people and places, so looking for a patient family with only adults. She is very playful, and her personality comes right out when she sees a toy. Cashew is looking to live in a quieter area, no city life for her. If you think she could be the one, and you'd like to help Cashew live the good life and be the companion she truly loves to be, then check it out. For more information on Cashew and the link over to Bay Path, go to Teddy's Facebook page at Teddy Goodpop. Find a Forever Home is brought to you by the Cantiani Insurance Group, with locations at 318 Plantation Street and East Douglas Insurance at 306 Main Street, Douglas, and anytime at 508-791-2088.
Golden Group Roofing is a community brand. From our master elite roofers and industry partners to our clients, every single person represents the Golden Group standard. We strive every day to make your home's needs a priority, because Golden Group invests in you and your communities. With unbeatable craftsmanship, customer satisfaction, reasonable pricing, Golden Group Roofing stands above the rest. Having been awarded GAF Master Elite Contractor, Certainty Select Shingle Master, and GAF Energy Certified Solar, Golden Group Roofing is 100% worthy of your investment. Experience the Golden Group difference, where hands protect what matters most. Visit us at goldengrouproofing.com or call us at 508-873-1884. 508-873-1884.
So are you tired of being tired? Well, then it's time to get the tea. Hey, it's Lisa here to tell you about this all-natural, all-organic tea I've been drinking that has had great results for over 20 years. It's called Life Change Tea, and it's specially formulated to help detoxify and cleanse your kidneys, liver, colon, and blood all at once. The colon is one of the most ignored organs in the human body. The faster that waste is eliminated from the body, the less time that waste sits in our intestines, spreading toxins to our bloodstream. This tea helps cleanse chemicals caused by outside intruders from our entire digestive system, and get this, weight loss can be a side effect. And with continued use of the tea, you can experience clearer, healthier, younger looking skin, increased energy, and a happier outlook on life. So if you're tired of being tired, get the Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com, and like me, you'll be glad you did.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second hour of the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830, WCRN Full Service Radio. Our affiliates live streaming in the TuneIn app. Just punch in WCRN and you can stream us anywhere. Even tell Alexa, play WCRN, she'll do that. And you can also go to our Facebook page at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show on Facebook. We have a camera in the studio, and the audio is streaming there. That's the important part. You can listen so many ways. Our phone line, 508-871-7000. You can reach into the studio for two-way talk and conversation, 508-871-7000. And our text line is running at 617-297-8388. So we have a lot to talk about. This idea to impeach the president or have him resign is so ridiculous that I'm going to get into an opinion piece from Rob Nettleson, and we'll talk about that. 508-871-7000, but let's go to the phones. Joanne, good morning, dear, and you look marvelous. Good morning, Joanne.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on Don's
Sure.
Not only the disgusting, horrific statements coming from Biden calling Cruz and Hawley Nazis, but a number of their senators have called for Hawley and Cruz to resign. Ron Wyden, Patty Murray,
right.
Chris Coons. I mean, maybe you said that. I'm not sure.
No, I didn't say it, but you're right. I do not understand where they're coming from, asking or saying that a colleague should resign for doing absolutely everything perfectly within their right to do, and which has been done by Democrats for every Republican president we've had in modern time.
Well, the author of this, who posted Hawley and Cruz's, it's Red State. That's the the organization. Anyway, he says that his opinion is they are targeting Cruz and Hawley because they are conservatives, because they can make their case effectively in any forum. So they're afraid of that. And because both have the potential to emerge as leaders of the Trump coalition. The attacks are just starting, and just like their forebear Nazis, the Democrats aren't going to stop until forced to do so. So they are afraid of people like Cruz and Hawley because they're very eloquent, very, unlike poor Trump, who always, I would say, oh God, there he goes again, sticking his foot in his mouth. But I was 100% supporter of him anyway, and I'm glad to see Pompeo. Did you see how Pompeo came out? He is not following the creeps are abandoning the ship, the rats abandoning the ship. He's saying that he is proud of the work he and Trump did, and he notices all the wonderful foreign work that they did, like leaving the WHO and the...
Well, look, when you look back at that, Joanne, right? I mean, from the moving of the embassy in Israel to multiple accords in the Middle East, right? You've got Dubai and Israel friendly. You've got, he had Iran on the heels. I mean, the media will not give this guy any credit, won't give him an inch. And if this was any other president who accomplished the degree of peace that this president has, I mean, it would be 24/7 coverage. But they just cannot allow him to be thought of as effective or doing good at all.
Well, not only that, Joe, they don't consider that good. They consider that bad because they are the fascists, and they think that, making Jerusalem and the embassy, they think that's terrible because that it's for the Democrats, that's a bad move, right?
Yeah, well, it was one of these things, Joanne, that every president would say it, that they're going to move the embassy. And it was this big, inside the Beltway, colossal joke. Yeah, but it's never going to happen. That's just what you say on the campaign. And this has been one of the things that has bothered the Beltway with Trump is they're saying, wait a minute, you are making promises, which is fine. We all do it, but you're delivering on them.
Right.
You're actually following through on them. We don't do that.
Right. To call out the Chinese Communist Party, to give them a hard time, to push back on them, well, you're going to see all of that turned around, right? All of that will be put back in. And I, like you said in the beginning, the ones who were partying the most hardest was the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing when Biden was elected.
Yeah.
The other thing I just want to tell, just briefly, get into is you had said in the beginning of the show that the Capitol Police man in the they're in a suit and tie, as you pointed out, that shot the woman.
Amy, Ashley Babbitt.
Yeah, Ashley. Yes, was shooting into the crowd.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't. He took deliberate aim at her. As a matter of fact, you can. I had retweeted this video that someone took. I went to look it up on Twitter, and now the tweet is unavailable. They took it down. But if you go to the person who originally, I did find one that they must have missed. Because if you go to at Still Gray, which is Ian Miles Cheong, I don't know, he's a conservative poster anyway. At Still Gray, you can clearly see the video of she climbed up on the door somehow.
They say she was
a
going to try
monkey.
to go through the window or something, right?
Yeah, and then he steps forward. It's a very small area because it's at the top of a very small stair. He steps forward and he shoots her point blank, only a couple of feet away from her. Yeah, so it is what it is. It really it wasn't shooting into a crowd. It was
Ian
very
Miles Chong, is that who you're talking about? Still Gray on Twitter.
Yeah, Ian Miles Chong.
Yeah.
He tweeted it, and then at Lawyer for Laws, who I also follow, tweeted it as well, and then I tweeted it. So maybe that's why they didn't. Twitter didn't get around to making this one unavailable, taking this one down, because it went through 3 people instead of just 2. Or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't know anything about it. But anyway, you should be able to watch it. It's very. Then the uniformed officer with his AR-15 comes running up the stairs and he points his weapon at the shooter. But of course, then he recognizes him right away, and he's just making gestures like "put it down, put it down."
Right.
So it's a horrific thing, and everybody should try to watch it. But I won't take up any more of your time. Joe,
no, that's a good call.
A great show.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I have not, but I'm checking out this guy's thing now, and I'm seeing a lot of tweets. So I'm gonna actually go through his stuff because he seems to have some good video and some good stuff on there. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, well, it's January 7th, so it might still be there.
Yeah.
At Still Gray, or you can try at Lawyer for Laws too.
Right.
And then you can really see that video. Okay, thanks, Joe.
Okay, and the other thing is, thank you, Joanne, but you were talking about, and I wanted to bring this up about China. Yeah, they were happy, but something that's very important is that Pompeo lifts restrictions on Taiwan. Now, well, we're all wrapped up in our stuff here, folks, right? China has been building islands in the ocean, literally taking real estate in India, and the constant tension with Taiwan, which China considers them kind of a territory, part of Mother China type of thing. Whereas Taiwanese people, it's a very sensitive subject. I married a Taiwanese national, and I got to tell you, they do not like to be called Chinese, nor referred to as part of China. They're very sensitive about this. So Pompeo lifts the restrictions that U.S. has had for contact with Taiwan officials. It's unofficial, but the United States removed the self-imposed restrictions on contact with Taiwanese officials as of January 9th. This happened again yesterday. The announcement made during the final days of Donald Trump's term marks the latest move to deepen ties with the self-governed island. The Chinese regime have viewed Taiwan as part of its territory to be brought into its control by force if necessary, and opposes any U.S. official contact with the island. Now, the secretary lifted decades-old complex internal restrictions. So the State Department has always had this internal policy of no contact. I know for a fact that there is, and there are American companies working with Taiwanese military for defense systems. So it's a very delicate balance because, again, China doesn't consider Taiwan to be independent. They call it a Republic of China. So the secretary lifted this decades-old complex internal restrictions that have regulated diplomats, service members, and other officials' interaction with their Taiwanese counterparts. The United States government took these actions unilaterally in an attempt to appease the communist regime in Beijing, Pompeo said, but no more. He ordered executive agencies to treat so-called contact guidelines on Taiwan previously issued by the State Department as null and void. The United States does not have a formal diplomatic relationship with Taiwan, but maintains unofficial ties with the self-ruled island under the Taiwan the Taiwan Relations Act of 1979, the TRA. Now, what's interesting is the TRA authorizes the United States to provide the island with military equipment for its self-defense, which we've done, which I have friends who have traveled to Taiwan to work on their defense systems, and has set up nonprofit corporation called the American Institute in Taiwan, the AIT. And that is now pretty much the de facto U.S. embassy on the island, because we don't have an official embassy, right? So they've gone around it. The American Institute for Taiwan is, in fact, the de facto embassy there. Pompeo has ordered that the executive branch relations with Taiwan are to be exclusively handled by AIT. He went on to say today's statement, this is yesterday, folks, today's statement recognizes that the U.S.-Taiwan relationship need not and should not be shackled by self-imposed restrictions of our permanent bureaucracy. The Taipei Economic and Cultural Representative Office, the island's de facto embassy in the United States, welcomed the action, saying it reflected the strength and depth of the relationship, and that we look forward to broadening the Taiwan-U.S. partnership in the months and years ahead. So what do we probably see down the road here? When China makes Mother China, mainland China, starts to make its moves to, like it did in Singapore, to bring them into the fold, to treat them like their own citizens, meaning complete surveillance, complete obeyance. And the Taiwan citizens, given their situation in relative to mainland China, has enjoyed a significant amount of autonomy and freedom that is not experienced by other Chinese citizens. So are we going to see, and you see this happening between the U.S.-Taiwan relationship, the AIT, and the TRA kind of setting up for Taiwan to ask for United States help and to be an ally at some point? And are we going to end up in some kind of territorial scuffle in the island of Taiwan? I don't know. It's something that we should be watching, is the point. All right. I don't know if I have enough time to get through this, but the whole discussion regarding an impeachment or attempting another impeachment of President Trump is so far out there. It's so ridiculous that I would turn to Rob Nettleson. Now, Rob Nadelson is he's a legal scholar, and he's someone I would take some views from here. He's a leading originalist scholar who served as a law professor for 25 years. He's a senior fellow in constitutional jurisprudence at the Independence Institute in Denver. His research articles on the Constitution's meaning have been cited repeatedly by justices and parties in the Supreme Court. So his commentary, he wrote an opinion on this, and he says it the best, better than I can ever say it. So I wanted to share that. Rob Nadelson. This is his. In any effort to impeach the president for comments made to Washington demonstrators would be flatly unconstitutional. See, the Constitution permits impeachment and removal of the president for, quote, treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, unquote. There's no reasonable claim that President Donald Trump's speech, which largely focused on disputed but credible claims of election irregularities, was treasonous or involved a bribe. And in the absence of proof of deliberate incitement to riot, it wasn't a high crime. So as in the former Trump impeachment, the only potential basis for removal from office would be commission of high misdemeanor. And we know from founding era evidence that in the Constitution, the adject high modifies misdemeanor as well as crime. So the previous impeachment proceedings were marked by a debate over the meaning of the phrase high misdemeanor. Each of the four academic experts who testified at the House of Representatives Judiciary Committee offered their own definitions. The prosecutors in the president's defense team offered their own definitions as well. This disagreement reflected an academic dispute that had been going on for many years based on incomplete surveys of the founding era records on British impeachment trials. Researchers had reached very different conclusions about the meaning of high misdemeanor. See, right? Isn't that always right? We hear that all the time of what you can impeach for. So he's breaking this down, and he's basically what he's doing is say, look, you got to go into the minds of is first and foremost a legal document, the supreme law of the land. Most of its framers were lawyers, as were most of those who explained it to the general public. Don't forget, there wasn't social media, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't the nightly newscast, right? So how this stuff got conveyed back in these days, they were town square, and lawyers would talk to everybody in the square and read off these announcements and explain to them what it is that the government was doing and how it would affect them. So the Constitution is first and foremost a legal document, the supreme law of the land. So thus the phrase high misdemeanors had a clear legal meaning, and no other clear meaning than we would expect the legal meaning to control. So in this respect, the phrase high misdemeanors would be like other recognized legal terms in the Constitution, like habeas corpus, equity, bail, privileges and immunities, and so forth. So the Trump impeachment proceedings inspired our author here to undertake a comprehensive survey of founding era legal sources to see if, quote, high misdemeanors had a defined legal meaning. If it did, that would resolve the long-standing debate, right? What did the founding fathers mean by high misdemeanors? Well, in constitutional research, the sources frequently didn't yield overwhelming one-sided evidence for an indisputable result. But it happened here where he says he was very surprised by this outcome, which contradicted what he had written previously. Nonetheless, he quickly admitted his mistake and duly published his new findings. So it turns out that high misdemeanor was in fact a precisely defined legal term. It meant, quote, serious crimes not meriting the death penalty, unquote. So here's the background. In 18th century England and America, the legal word misdemeanor technically included all crimes of any level of gravity. The most serious misdemeanors were denominated felonies or high crimes. Felonies traditionally were punishable by death. The most serious felony was treason. A person convicted of treason usually suffered a particularly horrible death. If you were a man, you were drawn and quartered. If you were a woman, you were drawn and burnt. Now, lesser felonies, at common law, there were 9 of them. Traditionally were punished by hanging. Some examples of those would be murder, rape, burglary, and robbery. He reports happily that by the time of the founding, the first offenders often received some, more lenient sentences than those. But serious offenses other than treason and felony were punished by prison time and by heavy fines rather than by death. These offenses included, among others, the bribery, attempted murder, assisting a duel. That was a serious crime. Certain kinds of blackmail, and so forth. Offenses in this category, they were called great misdemeanors or great misprisons, or high misdemeanors. Lesser offenses were just simply called misdemeanors. So this criminal law usage arose in England, but it was followed in America as well. For example, in his research, he uncovered that several congressional statutes passed in the 1790s that designated serious crimes as high misdemeanors and imposed penalties accordingly. As in England, Congress labeled lesser crimes merely misdemeanors. So high misdemeanors was a serious crime not meriting the death penalty. The icing on the cake from this conclusion was that it resolved some other questions that puzzled scholars, and it explained the structure of the Constitution's impeachment clause in the words treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors provided an example of a high crime, treason. One high example of a high misdemeanor, bribery, and include generic clauses covering other crimes in the same 2 categories. Observe what is excluded from the grounds for impeachment, though. Congress may not impeach and remove for a minor crime, nor may it do so because an officer is reckless, negligent, or has obnoxious political opinions. That's an important one, obnoxious political opinions. You can't do that for that. The constitutional penalty for those breaches is for lesser offenses removal by the president, and for the president and vice president, re-election defeat. In other words, the founding fathers said for those lesser things, you leave it to the election. The people will either re-elect you or not, and they didn't. So it's significant that in the biennium since these findings were published, no scholar has even attempted to rebut them, nor can they, by convincingly rebuted, given the volume and consistency of that evidence. And while the debate over meaning of the term continued, the House of Representatives could reasonably assume that non-criminal behavior could constitute a high misdemeanor, but that's no longer true. Now we can say unequivocally that whatever you may think of the president's speech, it's not a basis for impeachment. I will post this commentary on my Facebook page so you can read it yourself and check it out. But Rob Nettleson, who is an excellent legal scholar and has done this for 35 plus years, breaking this down and researching the Constitution, has summed it up for us. All right, folks, half past the hour. We're going to have to take a break. We're going to check in with case files from the LPDAM, and we'll be back on the other side. Stick with us. 508-871-7000. I'm Joe Mangiacotti.
Good morning and welcome to Case Files from the LPDAM, where we take a look at the actual cases, the law, and the lessons from the findings, and where we share the experiences of the experts of the Private Detectives Association of Massachusetts. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and joining us this week is Sean Burke, president of the LPDAM and resident manager of Courtside Legal Investigation. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Joe.
And Happy New Year. I know we're a week into it, but I think we're still allowed to say Happy New Year for a little while.
Well, it's been quite a new year. It started out with a bang.
It has been an historical week in Washington, D.C., and it appears from watching the news that the federal police were unprepared to protect the Capitol. I wonder if private security companies should be considered or integrated to ensure the protection of our government buildings and employees.
Joe, it is an unfortunate set of events that unfolded before our eyes. It appears the federal security police were unprepared for the attack on the Capitol. This put the federal Capitol, its employees, as well as politicians at risk. This could have been a lot worse. It is their job to protect the building and its occupants within it. Unfortunately, they were unsuccessful, and it is reasonable to say we're unprepared. This should not happen, and it will be marked by historians as an unfortunate part of American history. America as a whole are not proud of the behavior of these bad actors. They should be prosecuted. In fact, the actions of many were wrong. It has led to several top officials within the Capitol Police to resign and the rioters to be held accountable. Joe, I love the idea that we can participate in a protest and have a voice in America, but this does not give anyone the right to victimize others, damage property, or place people in fear. At lpdm.org, we have many professional members who provide executive protection and security-related services. In Massachusetts, it's required to have a Massachusetts private investigative license to provide security and executive protection services. After this week's events, if I was a politician, I would be hiring an LPDM member to ensure my well-being while the Federal Security Services figures out what's wrong and prove that they are capable of fixing it. It's too late after someone you're protecting is killed in such a mayhem type situation.
So LPDM has members who offer executive protection services. That's great, Sean. I would agree that if I were a political figure right now, I may want to consider going outside what the government is offering for my personal protection, and we've seen many mayors do this.
Joe, America is better than what we are experiencing right now. From what I know about security and protecting people and assets, it's all about the preparation. It's Security 101. If you inappropriately prepare, your failures will be exposed. This leads to people's lives being at risk. And in my opinion, we are fortunate with this attack on the Capitol. Whether it's an executive protection or providing security to protect large assets, LPDM has a provider for you. We know our business, and we are proud of our abilities to prepare for even the worst scenarios. It's our job. Remember, you're in good hands with LPDM.
Well, you certainly are. Thanks, Sean, for stopping by and sharing with us.
Thank you, Joe.
And thank you for joining us for Case Files from the LPDAM. Join us here each week on WCRN 8:30 a.m. and online anytime at lpdamcasefiles.com. You can visit lpdam.org, and you can find LPDAM on Facebook and Twitter at PI in Mass, and anytime at 800-955-6274. For Sean Burke, I'm Joe Mangiacotti. Hi, I'm Joe Mangiacotti. You know me from my radio shows and on-air contributions. But beyond that, I'm the president and owner of a second-generation private investigation firm, CIS and Associates, based right here in Massachusetts. The security and investigation industry has changed in many ways my father didn't even imagine when he began the agency over 3 decades ago. Private security and private protection is the fastest-growing segment of the private security industry. Personal private protection is a multi-billion-dollar-a-year business. At CIS CIS, we have a specialized sector, the Templar Division. This is the department tasked with the security and protection of individuals, often in cooperation with government agencies. But we offer highly trained and experienced body people for executives, government officials, and their families. If you are in need of a highly specialized service, I'd encourage you to reach out to CIS and ask for the Templar Division. You can call us directly at 508-296-5445, 508-296-5445, or email newenglandinvestigators@gmail.com.
To join the conversation, call 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Now, here's your host, Joe Mangiacotti.
All right, folks, welcome back to the final segment of the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN and our affiliates, as well as live streaming on the TuneIn app. Just punch in WCRN, and you can stream us anywhere on any device. Also tell Alexa to play WCRN. She'll do that. And we're streaming on our Facebook page at Joe Mangiacotti Show. The audio is streaming. There's a camera in the studio, so it's not a TV show, folks. Just to peek into the studio, you could probably see Teddy Goodpup sleeping next to me, but you got the audio streaming there. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. Lines open and available, and our text line as well at 617-297-8388. Let me go right to the phones. Ken's been waiting patiently through the break. Good morning, Ken. Good to hear from you again, sir.
Good morning, Joe.
What's happening?
Well, in these difficult times, I think I'd like to do an assessment of the past week and the past 2 months.
I would love to hear it. It's always good to see how people are digesting and interpreting the same things that we're seeing.
Well, let me say front out that obviously a lot of the claims of the left are wild and malicious in trying to suggest that the president directed the rioters to do what they did.
Right.
That's absolutely false.
Right. We've seen this, and I think we just talked about a little while ago about the gap between reality and what gets reported, and the selective editing and straight out changing of words. Like I said, I watched the president say, "Go home peacefully, end it now," and when he did say, "March and show your strength," you couldn't take it in any other context that show your strength in numbers and in enthusiasm and, being here, doing this. He never said fight. But yet I watched the news and they said the president told them to march down and fight. And you got to sit there and go, who do you turn to call foul? Where's the referee?
Right.
When the media is supposed to be that function.
So the group that is most at fault for the mess that we're in is just that, the media, because our democracy may not survive without some degree of a party to which the Fourth Estate was provided the freedom to provide us information. And if they're providing us false information, then we get a mess that we're in.
Yep.
But nonetheless, the bottom line is the president's pursuit of the votes over the past 2 months was flawed, particularly as it was executed by his lawyers, who made very big statements and claims and did not pursue them in court.
Or when they attempted to, they got kicked out for technicalities or filing dates. In other words, they couldn't even get the evidence to be heard.
That was at the national level because the election itself is an election in each individual state.
Exactly. And Ken, shouldn't they have spent the money and their efforts back? I mean, the Democrats filed over 300 lawsuits and changed how the election was going to be conducted. They should have fought it beforehand when the Secretary of State just arbitrarily changed the election laws without going through the legislature. They should have called foul before the election Don't you think that would have
Absolutely.
been a smarter
Absolutely.
move?
Absolutely. But let's just recognize reality. The pandemic that we've been living with since March created this opportunity for our opposition to do what they did. And the task to overcome that was immense. So as much as we both agree that steps should have been taken then to combat all of what was being done, unfortunately, we had circumstances that were going to make the task of the president winning very difficult. Bottom line, though, is then after the election, with all that occurred, his insistence of I won, and he may very well have, but we don't know. We don't have the proof. And unfortunately, that created an environment that doesn't make it inconceivable for the events of Wednesday to occur.
Yeah.
And that has resulted in all of his supporters, and there are so many who listen to you and call, in the lurch, whereby who do we have to support our American values that we've grown up with that are under assault?
I want to pause for a second to point something out. See, the behavior that we saw on Wednesday, there was no evidence of this behavior going to take place from previous Trump rallies, right? There's never been this kind of behavior before, right? There was no indication when the election was coming and we boarded up the country, we did that, or should say the governors and the mayors did that in case Trump won. Not in case Trump lost, in case he won, because he knew what the left would do and Antifa would do, right? That's because they had history and evidence of behavior. So when you came to a Trump rally at the Capitol on the 6th, no red flags really went up because that's never been a problem. True Trumpsters would show up, and we're talking couples in their 50s and 60s driving from Ohio and Nebraska, and they would clean up after themselves, and they wouldn't do this. And now we have evidence of and video of and stories, witness accounts of Trump supporters trying to stop these people who were there, but they were dressed different. They had helmets. Normal Trump supporters don't show up at Trump rallies wearing helmets and carrying rope. So you knew that these were, it's those things, what doesn't belong here, Sesame Street, which one of these things doesn't belong here? Well, the 22-year-old with dressed in black, a knapsack, a helmet, rope, doesn't belong at a typical Trump rally, doesn't fit the profile. But yet that's what we're there. And now we're seeing video in firsthand accounts of the typical Trump supporter actually pulling people out of off the window and off the wall and saying, don't do this. This isn't what we do. Stop it. So you have to believe and you have to know that the damage that were perpetrated was not from the norm. It was from a very small inserted people. And there are, I'm obviously on the net a lot for the show and for my articles and posting and all that. And there's one circulating where a guy, and they're trying to identify him, right? He goes on, there's a video floating out, and he says, hey, I'm just going to confess. I was actually paid to pretend to demonstrate. So we have that out there. You gotta wonder about this. You got to wonder about these buses that showed up with these bad actors on it. It just, nothing, again, is making sense. None of this, by any means, don't for a moment, people, think I am justifying or condoning the bad behavior at all. I condemn it, and everyone who broke glass, broke the law, stole something, caused damage to a federal building, just as I called for the people who burnt down a police station, threw Molotov cocktails into a federal courthouse, looted stores should be identified, arrested, so should these people. You can't say it's okay if you're politically in the right side. The behavior is the behavior. I was actually going to get into this. Greg Gutfeld, I enjoy him on Fox, and he takes a blowtorch to the media hypocrisies. I will talk about that after we're done, and I'll play some audio from it. So you have to be consistent, but what we're seeing right now is that, we see the left, the CNNs of the world, now getting on their high horse about this. And even the politicians who were not only silent during all of that destruction during the summer, but they actually bailed these people out and raised money to bail these people out. Where were their anger and their condemnation when federal courthouses were being burnt and police stations and people shot to death? Where were they? It only matters if it's done to their house. As far as I'm concerned, Ken, a federal building's a federal building. Doesn't matter if it's a federal courthouse in Oregon or the Capitol. You have done this to a federal building. And President Trump, who resurrected the old law there, right, that stopped a lot of these statues being torn down because it says federal statues or buildings, well, it shouldn't be suspended for these people. They should be applied. So all of these jamokes who did this should be arrested and prosecuted. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think there's near universal agreement on that topic. Unfortunately, the event itself, to the extent that Trump would have a voice going forward, he's forfeited most of it, given the events. And when I say he is forfeited, I mean to the extent that he provided his supporters false hope in the last few weeks in particular. I would say post the
he did put out an air, right? An air of there's something else coming. Yeah, wait till you see this. I got something up my sleeve. There was that kind of air about it. Yet,
which was false hope.
Which resulted in a lot of false hope. Whereas majority of congresspersons and senators knew that this was not the case, and they were looking for the opportunity on the 6th to put out there an official, right, where the media had to cover their conversation. And so one of the other byproducts of that behavior on the 6th is it derailed that conversation. And Cruz and Graham, these guys, they knew that it wasn't going to turn the electoral votes. It wasn't going, but it was going to give them the opportunity on that platform, in that venue of the certification process, to officially call out the irregularities in the voting. And they were hoping that would result in an investigation, committee or something that some creation of a vehicle to study it so that we can head this off in 22, in 24, and hopes of a Republican or conservative getting elected again someday in this country. Because if the system that they've been able to put in place, and as you pointed out, had a lot to do with the pandemic, which opened up the ability to justify these changes, knowing that they had to stuff the ballots with these mail-in stuff. And if that is let to stand, do we really have a say in our votes going forward? And that's why you have half the country disenfranchised, because if all of the branches, the fourth estate included, are against you, right? They all are against you. And the last thing that we felt that we have, Ken, is a vote. And if we feel that the vote is really doesn't matter, truly doesn't matter, because those elections are preordained and chosen by the inner party. It doesn't matter what you do. They've decided. Then what power do we have? And maybe that's that bubbled up on Wednesday, is that frustration.
That's what I'm suggesting. To the extent that 90 to 90% of the people that were there Wednesday were peaceful and good people. All it takes is 1% or more to have a reaction that's not inconsistent with the frailties of mankind, to sense the end of something and act in an irrational and destructive way.
Yeah.
And so I think the evidence is still that most of those who were committing the crimes were actually Trump supporters. There may have been some that instigators who, and maybe those that were the most violent were, false flag instigators.
Yeah.
The people.
Well, I think anyone carrying a rope
down
and
or
a helmet.
They may have been the 22-year-old that you described.
Yeah.
But in numbers, they were the minority.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, this has created an event that those in their that are at least adults are never going to forget, and it's hurt the cause.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
fortunately, I think what really hurt also was the manner in which Trump treated his vice president, with the expectation that he could somehow reverse this, and then that was
First of all, that was an unfair amount of pressure and attention and just ridiculous expectations to dump onto the VP, because it wasn't within his ability to do what it is that Trump alluded could be done.
Right, because his role was purely ceremonial.
Yes, and I know people got frustrated when they said, "Well, this is ceremonial." Well, no, he doesn't have that authority, and that's why Pence came out and he said, what did he say? Look, I researched this, looked at this. It's not my constitutional power. I can't just order these back. So that's why I go back to that. The Ted Cruz's and Lindsey Graham's were, and those in there, Hawley and those people, were just saying this is an opportunity where all eyes are going to be on us, right? The networks that will never listen to us kind of have to listen to us. So this is the opportunity that we have to go on record where everybody has to listen and talk about the irregularities and make sure it's out there on the official record. But then that was taken away from them by the jamokes who caused the melee. So
those senators' actions are justified and is within the constitutional availability. But the only way in which to reverse the vote was through both bodies voting in favor of rejecting certain electors,
right? Which
was never going to happen.
Never going to happen in the House, absolutely. So it was totally moot. So we just go back to, I think we all agree and understand that the senators who were vocal about it and who are now being told to resign did not expect the vote to be reversed, the electorals to be reversed. They did not expect the riot to take place. They just expected to be able to go on record that something doesn't smell right with this election. That's all. That was their goal. And the false hope that the president put out there and allowed to kind of take a life of its own on, shame on him for that. He took every opportunity, right, when he went to Georgia. And he wasn't 5 seconds into the speech about Purdue and Loeffler before he started talking about how wronged he was. And, when I watched that night, I'm like, we get that, but you're there for them right now. You're not there for yourself, and we're not there to listen to that. Like, Trump, now you're getting to be a little whiny about it, dude. We get it. It's horrible.
Did you catch what shifted between November 3rd and January 5th in the Georgia vote.
What shifted?
What groups? So really, the narrative of what happened January 5th, and we don't know, there may have been just as much invalid vote casting in both cases. We don't know.
Yeah.
But what seems to be evident is that the very strong Trump vote, a not insignificant number of those just didn't show up.
Yeah, this whole don't vote because of what happened on the who started, as far as I'm concerned, that was started from the left. I mean, that was some guerrilla warfare thing. Like what, how does that make sense? Oh, you're pissed off about the November 3rd election. You're going to really show them, don't go vote at all on the Republican side. How does that fix it? How does that, all it does is it hands the election as it did to the two Democratic candidates. So who started that? L. Wood?
Yeah.
I mean, were you paid off by the Democrats to start that movement? In other words,
but effectively, if Trump is yelling it's crooked, it's crooked, it's crooked, then there are people whose will is going to break.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and the flip side of losing the rule vote is apparently some of these suburban women did revert back to the Republican candidates. It's just those two cross currents, the loss of the rule vote was more than the cross current of the suburban women, and the Dems came out in high forces in both cases.
Yeah.
Whether if we don't know how much of it was legitimate votes or not, but the bottom line is they showed up in near equal force both times.
Well, Georgia has. I mean, it's obviously it's not a red state. I don't know if it's purple or blue, but it's at least purple. And we've got the first black senator from Georgia, and I think Ossoff is the youngest senator ever elected. He just beat Joe Biden, didn't he? By a year or 10 months or something?
I wasn't even following that. I didn't know he was that young.
Yeah, he's 34, I think now.
Oh, no, Biden was like 30, 31.
So maybe
he was elected.
When he was elected.
Biden was elected in 72, which was 48 years ago. He was like 30, 31. So I'm not going to, I don't know.
I thought also, well, maybe Ossoff's second, but I mean, he's an extremely young senator. Without really a political history coming into it.
Likewise, Ted Kennedy, I think, was 30 when he became senator.
Well, he's a young guy. He's a very young guy without a lot of. And I think he's a trust fund kid too. I think, right? Isn't he? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and there's the money that he gets has connections to China, and so
that's started to come up. Well, the thing is, and can you be that surprised? Because if you look at Swalwell, right? I mean, Swalwell is. I mean, let's face it. He's not. He's not the brightest bulb on the tree there, and he's what was he, an L.A. city councilman or something, and Feng comes into his life, and all of a sudden he's at parties he never would have been at otherwise. She bundled all his money. She put interns in his office. So you have to wonder, how many CCP operatives are scattered throughout the country targeting the Ossoffs and the Swalwells and those young Democratic city councilors and local state reps and stuff that they're cultivating. Because, folks, I can't say this enough to you. China doesn't think in short term at all. They play the long game. They always have. They always will. And for their spy agency to invest 15 years, 20 years, in millions of dollars over time into cultivating what we call a UI, a useful idiot to them, is just par for the course for them. That's just how they do it.
So the message for the future is buck up. Whether it's Mark from Worcester, who 24 hours ago was stating is disgust, and I'm just not going to vote anymore.
Yep.
We have to keep
Well, I
pointing
said he's
out.
not going to vote Republican anymore. I
Well,
think he'll
we'll
vote,
announce
but
they're
not
voting
Republican.
because he's not voting Democrat. We all know that. But the point I'm making is all you can do is point out the corruption that's going to explode. And the response is, we ain't that.
Yeah.
We're not perfect, but we ain't that.
You got it. But we're out of time.
The only way
Ken.
to fight back is to the person who has the best ability to fight the corruption that we're staring at.
That's it. Ken, thank you. I'm out of time against the clock, buddy. All right, folks, that wraps up the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll be back Thursday for Political Thursday. I'm Joe Mangiacotti.
WACE Chicopee and WCRN Worcester.
You're on your way home and you get the call. We need milk. And how about some